G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Off Ukraine War update for the 20th of July 2026. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, and as the war continues, I'll continue to bring comprehensive news on the Ukraine war from both sides. Now, we only have Ukraine's to tell us what was hit. And, well, they're not really telling us much, are they? Despite the world headlines, Ukraine is not admitting to attacks on Kiev today, though they are admitting to Kharkiv. But there's a number of attacks they're not admitting to, although there's some drone attacks. Doesn't say where. In the Kharkiv region and Kharkiv. Multiple missile attacks on Odessa, multiple drone attacks on Zaporozhye, although there were other attacks. This was one of Russia's, probably the largest missile attack of the war, which is not saying much, given it's not even in the hundreds. So, you think how much Iran has been hit? It doesn't compare to Ukraine, does it? Iran's taken quite the battering. Now, in the north here, we have conflict in the buffer zone. Not much to report. There's been only small movement on the map. We've got nothing to report in Kupiansk. Yeah. Seems to be a bit quiet on the Lugansk regional border. However, in Donetsk, we have the Russians continuing to push at Lyman for no results. Continuing to push towards Mykolaiv with no significant town falling. But the Russians are trying to get the rest of Kovaluka. They have not been fully successful at Royovrimska, as in their push towards Onoviska. And they are bogged down here as well. So they are looking to flank and take control of this road. Yeah, flank this town, control this road. And there's, of course, much of the quiet front is still quiet. Not entirely. There was some artillery barrages from both sides. And Koshnikovia, we'll get to that later, but Russia is trying to cement its hold on Koshnikovia, though Ukraine continues to infiltrate positions there. As you can see, there are clashes, and we'll get to those, get to Koshnikovia later. But the Russians are slowly taking what's left of this town. They are consolidating their position outside of these towns, but there are Ukrainians in the way, and they have not been defeated. The Ukrainians have not been defeated here for some time. They're holding back here, even though they're flanked. So they're holding the Russians off here as well. And this area is still contested. It has changed hands a number of times. Then as we go around the map, you can see there's some gains, not very significant. Nothing significant has fallen, though a town has. We'll get to that later. And as you can see in the Zaporozhye, there is also no change, significant change to the map. Yes. The war is like slow molasses. Brief reminder that this channel is sponsored by you. Empire of Elves, that's one word, empireofelves.myshopify.com, your one-stop shop for enchanting treasures based on my writing. There's the Emperor, the Empress, the Kushi poster, the elven dog. Moving on, as I said, World News is reporting Russia's largest ballistic missile on the attack on Kiev since the start of the war. It's believed to be 41 missiles fired just at Kiev. Now, there are also the media is highlighting a shortage of Patriot air defense missiles. Now, this isn't because of deliveries. Again, this is because previous attacks have been successful, which Ukraine has not reported. And because they did not report them, and there are some organizations in America which, if Ukraine says it didn't happen, they will believe them. Now, that's a dangerous, very dangerous, in that military planners need the truth. And if they aren't given the truth, this is why when Zelensky went to Trump and unveiled that Ukraine was out of missiles, they weren't lying for a change. But the US cannot just suddenly snap its fingers and as it used to, and suddenly produce hundreds of, billions of missiles, billions of dollars worth of missiles, when they are already, and have to dish them out around the world to hotspots. And this is what China is counting on. Right? How long it takes to wear down the US Patriot missile defense. How many ballistic missiles do they need to stockpile? What types do they need to stockpile? Where do they need to hit to maximize their damage? Russia is the proxy in this war just as much as Ukraine is. Now, domestic tension's been reported here. We'll get to those shortly, but the removal of his defense minister has angered the people, and that anger hasn't gone away. Fedorov has been replaced, and they're saying this is the worst decision of his presidency, which is quite a lot of history of bad decisions. Now, Russia did strike the post office, and the local media reports 3 hits. Elsewhere in other areas, there was attacks on Zaporozhye, Kherson, Dnepropetrovsk, confirmed, drone attack, Odessa, Sumy. So Al Jazeera is actually reporting things that Ukraine hasn't, which, if you may not know Ukraine's law, is a crime. If the Ministry of Defense says it didn't happen, you have to report it didn't happen, or you get cut off. Now, Al Jazeera is probably bold enough, big enough to stand up to that and say, we can continue reporting without you. Yeah, but see, there are many places hit today, and by the missile barrage, it may be close to 100. Of course, he calls Ukraine, look, refuses to meet. Yeah, you're the one You're the one who can end the war. Zelensky says, "I end the war if Putin comes to Kiev so I can murder him." Yeah, yeah, walk of shame. Come on, admit you're wrong, and this is you're the cowards. What a joke! These people are stupid beyond belief. Europe has to be insane to be backing these people. Yeah, I get it that it's democracy and we got to back the government. Well, you didn't in Romania, you didn't in Poland, you didn't in Latvia, you didn't honour the elections in France. You meddle in France, cutting out tens of thousands of votes from Lyons and other areas. You allowed 500,000 votes from Algeria to seep in. No, this ain't serious, bro. This is EU propaganda at its worst. Childish and simplistic. Yeah, if you have to resort to slander, you're like that. If you're a politician and you resort to slander, yeah, even Trump, right? People call out Trump all the time, yet here they are slandering others all the time. The left are hypocrites. So, like I said, there are protests today, despite after the missile, they continued after, despite the sleepless night, they woke up they started early in the morning. Thousands of residents gathered to make their voices heard, demanding systematic change, right? Reinstall of Fedorov and dismissal of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Zelensky. Yeah. This is Kiev Post, by the way, the official newspaper in Kiev. Record-waving ballistic missile attacks. Record-breaking, yeah. One penetrated the street, exposing the air raid shelter entrance. Yeah. Gets me is they're not reporting them all either. But so between multiple sources, I am getting quite the picture of close to 100 missiles, not quite. So somewhere between 89 and 93 missiles have hit targets. So there were probably well over 100 launched. Now, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, they launched mostly air-guided, but they also launched loitering munitions. Those are drones with fuel storage tanks. They loitered around the port of Odessa, hitting ships. They continued. They did hit logistics centers. Now, here's the thing. This comes hot on one of Ukraine's largest attacks on Moscow, hitting logistics centers. But Russia has hit logistics centers in the past. One of their favorites was the Kharkiv post office, because that's where all the notices were issued for conscription in the region. And here they even admit, they hit coastal defense, lubrication. They're telling you the targets they hit because they want to embarrass Ukraine. They want to point out that they're not weak. And yeah. Now, of course, you're going to notice they missed a lot of targets here as well. Yeah, they did. everyone is not telling the whole story. It's fragmented over multiple sources. And everything, sometimes you only get a fragment of the news. Yeah, you're not going to get the misses. I get that. They're not going to admit when they didn't hit their targets. If they only hit 8 targets out of 10 missiles, they'll say they launched 10. They'll say they launched 8 missiles. And yeah, I know what propaganda is, so please don't lecture me on propaganda, okay? And this is why I'm showing you this video, by the way. To Ukrainian infiltrators, this is a common tactic with Ukrainian flags to show that Ukraine still controls Kostnikovia. This is the marketplace in Kostnikovia, then the center, near the center of the town. They came in with Ukrainian flags to show that, and they got captured by Russian patrol, and they showed their images, right? And they got them to thank the Russians for not killing them. Now, Russia is doing this to say that Kostnikovia is under full control of the Russian army. Well, yeah. They're sweeping through it. They're trying to clean out munitions and stockpiles. And yes, there's still Ukrainians who filter into Kostnikovia. And yes, these two were probably probably the only ones who weren't killed. Yeah, our comrades were killed. Yeah. So they admit. What I've been telling you all along. Russia's best. I've been warning you for ages. If you keep assuming Russia is lying, you're going to miss the you're going to make bad decisions in life, because you won't be able to know fact from fiction. If you can't read laterally, and that is across multiple platforms, multiple stories, which most people can't do because you don't have the time, right? So if you can't trust, and if you're going to keep calling me propagandist, well, I hope at least I'm entertaining you. I'm not asking you to go away. I'm just asking you to just swallow your pride a little bit and stop calling me a propagandist. I don't know what I'm doing, all right? These chaps, yeah, with probably a full squad. They are probably thankful and lucky to be alive. And they are probably, yeah. Oh, Iran, as I suggested many times, Iran has been getting trucks from China and maybe even Russia overland, right? Because a war in Iran is reducing the availability of Patriot missiles for Ukraine. It is giving Russia and China first-hand intelligence on American attack patterns and American weapons, so they can plan air defenses to deal with the fact that America's Air Force is the largest, right? And that air combat with the American Air Force, yeah, would result in a huge costly. And if you noticed, a lot of the Russian aircraft, even the MiG-31, are all configured as standoff aircraft. Right, you got different aircraft for speed, and different aircraft for altitude, and different aircraft for different weapon systems. So you got the Su-27, 37, 25, all the way up Su-57, MiG-31, and a handful of trainers and a handful of different cargo planes. The Russian Air Force is specializing mostly now in standoff, though it still produces fighters, even those fighters launch long range air to air. So UK has a new Prime Minister. Keir Starmer did not survive the spill. It was quick, it was brutal, and he walked in, confronted Steer, and Steer folded like a folding chair in a hurricane. Everyone knew Keir Starmer's a weak man. Why they? It was just his turn. That's why. That's the problem with the left. They have a hierarchy, and it's political, not representative of the people. They do their own thing. They bully the people. It's a top-down system. Now, Russian forces have, and I've confirmed this from different news reports, taken a small town on the border between Dnipro and Donetsk. It's a blink if you miss it, but it still represents an advance and the death of Ukrainians. And there weren't that many battles reported today. There weren't that many deaths reported today. The main focus today was the air war, and Ukraine has struck back. So tomorrow, Russia gets revenge for these attacks, and then Ukraine says, "Oh, these attacks are revenge for your attacks for you." So there will be more attacks tomorrow. Now, the ongoing situation in Sevastopol is food and supplies continue to be flowing in. Ships continue to brave the coastline despite attacks. And sooner or later, that submersible launching drones will be seen. Russia will most likely, because they are behind technologically in some areas, be working very hard to catch up on water surface analysis to distinguish man-made objects from natural objects, because it can be as small as a buoy on the surface, the breathing tubes for these small control, and some of them are probably remote, so they'll only have an aerial above this. They'll be just below the surface with an aerial, and they'll detecting autonomous boats, and Russia is and hasn't reported much on it, but I have seen articles suggesting they are deploying helicopters to take on these drones and drone boats. So it's not like they're doing nothing. So Zelensky's plan to make Russia surrender by starving the people of Sevastopol, that is cruelty, man. Starving people. That's medieval siege warfare, starving people into submission. No, I don't know if it's against the Geneva Convention, so don't ask me. I doubt it. And it's not like they're going to do anything against Ukraine, right? Since when have they done anything about Ukraine? But when you look at the map overall, you can see the clear pattern, right? The two-pronged attack, Russia's two-pronged attack, and it does question where they're going to stop when the pressure applies, and for now, they are going to try and weather the storm. And now, yes, if you realize Trump has asked for the sanctions package to be extended to Iran. They are considering that now. It'll be 5 days before the bill comes in. Comes in. It'll be 5 days, between 5 to 10 days before it takes effect. We'll see the first sanctions mid-August in operation, and we'll see whether or not which countries they've targeted out of which countries are going to fold and which countries won't. And we'll see, where does India stand? Where does Pakistan and other countries stand? And you'll see they're duplicitous. Most countries out there are trading both sides, trying to profit where they can, get what they can while they can. They're not your friends. They'll turn on you if China can offer them enough, as you've seen with some of the African nations. And Bill Clinton spent a lot of time in Africa, and all that is for naught. The Clinton network was exposed. You've heard of it lately? Anything? No. Without that cash money, and this is why Democrats are screaming, because they're influence peddlers. There's no love out there. It's all politics and cash, baby. Cash is king in politics. And their influence campaign is losing control in Kiev. They're losing control of the narrative. With Keir Starmer gone, the protesters in Ukraine may increase. Because without the British, without the enforcers, right, without their, because it's British money funding partially, but they have the biggest influence apparently in Kiev still. They appointed a Ukrainian head of their own intelligence service. That's how embedded, right, they are with each other. Because after World War II, the British took in thousands of Nazi collaborators to work for them. Just like America and Russia and Germany and China. And you say, and Germany? Yeah, when the new German government, how do you think they knew who to arrest? You think they captured party records because the Nazis were sloppy in covering up? No. People were grabbing books and going to their nearest, whoever was nearest, and going, I got valuable intelligence. Because for the cost of a meal, you too could be a traitor, I suppose, but, a hero of the revolution, comrade, and we're going to see this in Ukraine, the splitting of Ukraine. Well, it's already happened, but the Ukraine war, let's see, do you think it's going to be a year or 6 months? Neither side can sustain economically, but Russia, of course, could if China pulled its finger out, but China wants things desperate. They want things managed, and they want the information to be as clean and as so they don't want to think, right? Because remember, China wants a Chinese victory. So if China and Russia join forces in Ukraine and get commingled in a wider war, it won't be a Chinese victory. So China also, remember, China also wants Russia to capitulate in the end so that they can take more control of Russia. And they may even be overt and take over Crimea, take over Siberia, Vladivostok, and a few other areas. Take over key industries in Russia because they desperately need to rebuild their own. Their own are riddled with corruption. Their own relied on Western components more than you think. Even today, a lot of these missiles use Western components. Though those Western components come from factories in China. And a lot of companies have already moved in anticipation that they'll get sanctioned. But India has also got their meddling and and supplying components to Russia to keep this war going, because India wants to be powerful and influence in the region, and they want to counter China. Remember, India tried to build the Ring of Steel, and that is put a base opposing every Chinese base. They built 7 bases to counter Chinese bases. But they miscalculated their own economy, and their own friendship with Mongolia was fragile at best. Sudan and fragile at best. They're all fragile. They're all right. And a lot of people forget Ukraine. They're purposely obtuse, right? They're being obtuse. They will not recognize the fact that Ukraine is an enemy pretending to be a friend so that we would save them and bail them out. It's the Ukraine economic plan. It's like the Jordanian economic plan, attack Israel, get American aid, become a developed country or a developing country, and just sit back and watch everyone else flail around and fail. And they hope by default that they will be a regional partner with the US, and eventually with Israel's influence waning, that they will rise up. Well, that was Syria's plan too, but Syria sided with Russia. Iran wants to be the regional power, and none of the other countries want that. But they don't want a clean US victory. They want some sort of regional victory, so that their regional partners all can stand there with their and say, "Look what we did." It's the typical post-war modernist approach to warfare. Let the US do the heavy lifting, but but because it's in our area, we do all the command and controlling. And we're going to see this with Ukraine. They're going to say, you can have some bases, but and this is all about their little toy soldier games. They want to pin a medal on their chest, but they don't want to do the hard work. They want others to do it for them, the heavy lifting, which is why Europe is so upset right now with the US not giving them their victory in Ukraine. But the US obviously know what's going on. They obviously know what this is, just a proxy war, a prelude to something bigger, and that if they get too involved or too bogged down, which is why they want to stop Iran, but this is one of the things, right? And I bet you Russia and Ukraine are both pissed that America is pouring more weapons into Bahrain and the bases in Kuwait than into Ukraine, missile defenses all the way to Jordan, And, of course, for Russia, they're watching Chinese missiles, particularly Dengfeng, in mass go into Iran. Missiles that could, in theory, help tip the balance in Russia's favour. Larger payload, faster missiles. Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah. That would be a game changer. Especially if these Dengfeng missiles are getting through Patriot batteries. So, now, we don't know how many. And we don't know how many are fired to get that penetration either. So, we'll see what happens over the next 2 months. But day by day, you'll see that Red Sea moving. And as you can see, it's forming a line. The reason why they're trying to keep that line at that angle is to prevent a full counterattack. Any attack from here can be countered by an attack from here. Any attack from here and here can be counterattack. And plus, if you push too far, you run into a second and third army. You have to be able to form big formations. And one of the problems is neither side can form big formations without getting hammered by. So Ukraine is unable to mount an offensive defense. They have to strategically wear out Russia. And Russia, unable to do the same, have to strategically wear out Ukraine. And as you can see, the focus clearly is the end game, Donetsk. However it will play out, whether they collapse at the top or collapse at the bottom or in the middle, that's where Russia advances. And that's the state of the war. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, which you can find in the description below in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.